how do we enliven the people's song with a praise band? By enliven, I mean help them participate in what we're doing. Let us pray. Gracious and loving God, thank you so much for the gift of this time together, for the opportunity to be reminded that we are your people and that you have entrusted us with this sacred task of empowering your people the same, to help them embrace the image of you that is inside of them and to move them from consumers to creators. God, I thank you for the ministry of each person in this room and in this conference and for the beautiful ways in which they are transforming the world ever more into your image, into your dream for what you would have us to be. I ask that you bless this time and open all of our minds and our spirits, mine certainly included, to hear what you might have for us today. Let all God's people say, Amen. Amen. So just a little bit about me. My name is Joe Stobaugh. I'm an ordained minister in the United Methodist Church, so I'm thankful that you're allowing an Armenian to be in your midst. It's very gracious. The hospitality of this conference is fantastic. It's truly, truly top-notch. So if you were to hop on 35 East here in Waco area and drive up for about an hour and 40 minutes and then take the Dallas-Fort Tollway, you'd run into Frisco, Texas, where I serve as the Executive Minister of Worship and Arts at Grace Avenue United Methodist Church. It's a phenomenal mission field. We have the third highest Indian population in the United States. It's a very transient area. A lot of business moves there. Huge sports. The Dallas Stars headquarters there. The Cowboys are moving there. The Mavericks have a team there. FC Dallas has a team. One of the Rangers minor league teams there. It's a great place to raise an athlete and a wonderful subversive countercultural opportunity for a church musician. But the church is 17 years old. And one of the delightful things about it is we have roughly 2,400 adult members. Only 5 of them grew up in Frisco. So we don't have any common piety, which is a blessing and a curse, but more of a blessing because there's very few sort of sacred cows. Kind of the general attitude is, well, let's try that. Why wouldn't it work? So it's a really fun place to be in ministry. So we have 2 worship venues at Grace Avenue, and we have 6 services a weekend, and they're all different. And this is language that I don't think is particularly helpful, so if you've got a suggestion on another way to say this, I would love to hear it. But we have 3 that are modern or contemporary, and 3 that are traditional. But they're all in their own ways very unique. So that's a lot of what I get to spend my time doing. I've learned more about how to use a spreadsheet than I ever thought possible. That's a lot of ushers to make sure we're rolling, but it's a good and blessed thing. So just a little bit about me. So I have this theory that we are blessed as ritual artists and as church musicians. Is everyone a church musician? Or musicians who works in the church? I also like to think of us as ritual artists, because that's a big chunk of what we do. I believe we live in the best time in the 2,000 years of Christianity to do what we do. The enormous amount of resources that are at our fingertips is just mind-blowing. It's a great gift for us to do our primary work, which is to enliven the people's song, to help our people participate. So I want to say to the choir at home, what's the biggest choir in the church? Congregation. In a contemporary or band-driven context, the people are the 5th member of the band. Right. So how do we get them engaged? I don't know. Maybe you feel a little bit like Sisyphus. You remember Sisyphus pushing the rock up the hill? Gets up to you feel like that when you're trying to get congregational singing to really happen. I've experienced this, especially in praise and worship service. I can't tell you the number I've been to where this is the average look of the congregation member.
Yep.
Defeating.
In the Methodist Church.
Yeah, especially amongst my tribe. You are not mine. Not all of them, but some of them. So we're going to look at basically 4 things that I think transcend any style of music as far as what we need to do as enliveners to help the people sing. Then we're going to look at some technical pieces as well, some things that generally can inhibit congregational song in a band standpoint. All right? So the first thing is we have to realize our culture. We live in an American Idol, performance-driven entertainment musical culture. Right? It was not always thus, but it is the way that we live now. We live in a culture that doesn't exactly encourage communal singing. We've relegated our songs to other people. And in so doing, we've relegated, in some sense, our community and our power as the people of God by giving away the things that give us power. One of those being communal songs. I mean, how many public gatherings have you been to lately where you sang anything other than Happy Birthday or sort of sang under someone singing the Star Spangled Banner and Melizma, 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 right? I read somewhere once that the average American has 3 songs they sing communally. The average non-Westerner has a repertoire of 30 to 40. And the 3 songs were, you want to guess?
Isn't it?
Happy birthday,
We
Pardon?
Star-Spangled
Star Spangled Banner,
We wish you a Merry Christmas.
Jingle Bells. So, we have some work to do.
Yeah.
But it is a beautiful, beautiful opportunity. So, I mean, you remember when American Idol came out, right? Well, those many years ago. I think a lot of those shows have done some real damage to us culturally, as we want to pass forward a culture of communal music making. But what made it different from other shows? Remember? There was one thing that really made it kind of unique.
Was it the voting?
The voting. That's right. The voting was a very interesting feature. And what that shows to me is that in some fashion, people actually really do want to participate. I mean, think of the desire for choice we have in our culture. How many toothpaste options do we really need? But there is an aisle. People want to have choices. They want to be engaged in what they're doing. I mean, so much of Gen Xers on down to millennials, it's all about experience in life. So I really believe, and I've an anecdotal experience in my own ministry, that people want to sing. They just don't know how, or if they're invited to, or if their voice is okay. And so I think we have this really neat opportunity to move people from consumers of music to creators of music. I think that's the direction as ritual artists. We've got to be rowing in the 21st century to become the church that God dreams for us to be in this time of history. We have a beautiful opportunity before us to add our generation's stanza to the church's song. It's a beautiful quote from a bishop named Joel Martinez. So yes, this voting thing is indicative to me of a desire to participate in some fashion. It's a little, Roman Colosseum-esque musically, if you think about it, but there's involvement in it nonetheless. My experience, especially, for example, trying to recruit adult choral members, and the big barrier for most people singing is that it's somewhere in their lives, at some point in their childhood, someone, a music teacher, God forbid, a minister of music, said to them that either they couldn't sing, or maybe they just need to sing a little softer here, or Johnny, why don't you just lip sync? And that in turn robbed them of the gift of song that is the inherent right of all human beings. We are musical people, but we have to help our people understand that and give them ways in which they can experience that. And my heart breaks for adults who've had this experience. I wish I could go back in time and defend them. So now it is my mission, every time I hear a child sing in church, I go up to that child after service and say, that is the most wonderful thing. Thank you for leading us in worship today. Please don't ever stop doing that. And even if they're out of tune, I don't care. It's the energy, it's the sense of willingness, because we can work with that. It's our responsibility to work with that. Sorry, I get a little preachy after a Dr. Pepper float, apparently. So let's go to the next piece, all right? So recognizing the real situation which we have. People want to participate, they don't know how. And as music education budgets continue to dwindle, that's the first thing that gets cut in public school. And the church, we have an opportunity to fill that void a little bit, and a responsibility. I'm so fortunate we have several music educators in the congregation that I work in, and it's a great district. So we're talking with folks in other districts of how can we step in and help provide music where kids don't have any. I mean, there's a district that's 30 minutes away from Frisco, which is one of the richest places in Texas. They have no music education. So I have an ukulele choir. It's phenomenal. It's way fun. We have 40 people in this choir. So we're working to try to figure out, can we get some grant money to get ukuleles in that district and then have people go through and once a week work with them. Because we have an opportunity, we have a real gift to share. I mean, this is a separate conversation entirely, but what if we reimagine music ministry as being 40% of our time outside the walls of the church? Instead of getting a fifth handbell choir or whatever, what if we spend time in our community? How would that deepen and enrich us and help us do our work? I'm telling you, Dr. Pepper flows, brings out the preacher. So the next piece, we've got to, in addition to recognizing our culture, we need to invite people to join in the fun, to invite them to sing. One of the keystone habits I'm working with the staff that I work at Grace Avenue is that, which does include a Baylor alum, to ask this question in worship, design, worship planning. Whatever we're looking at, how does that decision empower the people to participate in worship? If we really believe liturgy in the Greek word liturgy means the work of the people, how do we enable them to do that? Maybe another question, another way of putting that is, a friend of mine named John Thornburg, I'll use one of his things in just a second, says, what do the people know how to do that we're not letting them do? If you think about what we do in worship, it's quite a bit. So how do we build an ethic and a culture of participation? I mean, that is actually a pretty Protestant thing. So I think it's imperative for us as enliveners of People's Song, to make verbal and non-verbal invitations to our people to participate in every area of worship, while not being pedantic or laborious or resorting to this terrible temptation that affects so much modern music and modern worship services, which is this desire to explain everything in the service. People are sometimes smarter than we give them credit for. I've been in services where it takes 3 minutes to explain how we're going to do communion. People will figure it out. They will. They will. Especially if you put some people in front of them to show them without having to talk it through. I had a bad experience in the United Church of Canada once. There was 5 of us in worship, 2 which were my wife and I. And they're like, you should take communion first. And it was terrifying. It's like, I don't know how you can do it. You know, it's like a really elaborate ritual. Anyway, so from gentle reminders to our people that worship is a verb, it's something that we do, to the choices we make with our bulletin content, what we do with screens, stage direction, lighting, I pray that we'll keep stressing participation being one of the primary factors in how we make decisions. And then to occasionally just remind people that this is their work. This is what we get to do this together. It's John Thornbury, again, I mentioned him, I don't know if any of you know him, he's a fantastic hymn writer, it's a glorious text. He talks about, he uses a bumper car analogy. So where do bumper cars get their power from? It's a stick, right, that goes up into the ceiling and it gets the power to the car. In so much of our worship, the power is only turned on over the chancel, or over the platform, or over the name. Our job is to get that power out to the people, because that's when we start to have some fun, when we begin to kind of run into each other a little bit. All right, so knowing our context, actually inviting people to sing with us, because we live in an entertainment society where they're used to it. This is the default thing in what they do, right? So inviting them to be a part of what's going on. We also need to teach the songs. Unfortunately, we don't live in a culture where people even know Western hymnody anymore. I did a funeral probably 3 months ago, and one of the songs we picked to sing was Amazing Grace, and it was folks who were like non-churched. They didn't know it. I think there used to be a time in Western Protestants where there's 25 hymns that everybody know. The time is gone. It's not here anymore. I mean, maybe, at least in the context that I've served. And it's especially true in modern contemporary worship. I don't know if you've ever known the musician Michael Gungor. He's a phenomenal musician. He leads a liturgical post-rock collective. Very, very beautifully nuanced music. But he wrote a book that came out in 2014 called The Crowd, the Critic, and the Muse, a book for creators. It's a really interesting book. It's worth it alone for the appendices. So in one of the appendices, he's since left the contemporary Christian music and just does music, which is a glorious thing in its own way. But he was talking to an executive for a record label for contemporary Christian music, and they started talking about the marketplace. So of the roughly 2 billion people on earth who call themselves Christians around the world, roughly 2 million of those 2 billion people are what the industry defines as active consumers in contemporary Christian music. So 0.1% of the people who call themselves Christians are really listening to contemporary Christian music. So it's easy to sort of fall into the trap like, oh, well, this song is on the radio and people know it. They don't. The vast majority of people are not active consumers of this, and it's all niche-based anyway at this point, like the rest of the music industry. So the idea that they're just going to know when they come in is just not true in any kind of worship style. So we have to make teaching a really important part of what we do, but we've got to make sure that we do it in a way that doesn't interrupt the flow of what's happening in worship. So for example, great opportunities to think about how we do this. So if I'm introducing a new song in one of the contemporary services, I do this even in some of the traditional services. The week before, I want them to sing the first part of it. I'll have some sort of an arrangement and put it in the offering, right? So they got a shot at it. And then we'll blast out on Facebook, hey, these are the songs we're going to sing this week. It's great. So with YouTube links, so they can, if they want to, they can go hear it on their own time. They don't do it that much, but it's a nice idea. And then the next week, we'll start the service, if it's appropriate in that place, with the guitar. We're going to sing this song today because we're talking about X theme. This song works so well, I hope it becomes a gift for you, a heart song you can take into your daily life. I'm going to sing the chorus. This is all while it's being underscored on the guitar or piano or whatever is the lead instrument that you use. I'm going to sing this chorus, and I want you to sing it back to me. Sing the chorus, invite the people to sing it back. As they're singing it back, You start to add in some drums, maybe just real light cymbal flourishes, add the bass in, and then go right to the stanzas, which only the band sings. One thing you put up there, you can go a couple different voices, I suppose, but the thing we want the congregation to sing is the chorus. That's week 2. Week 3, we help them out a little bit with the stanzas, and then we say it one more time, 4-week process. If they come to church, there's only so much we can do about that, they've got a new song. So the big trick is the where in the service in which we do this teaching. You know, there's nothing worse than like halfway through going, oh yeah, hang on, I want to teach you this song. Oh, killer, right? The other piece of that is our teaching has to be positive. It has to be positive. It has to, with a warm and inviting spirit. There is no quicker way to kill a new song than, so I know you guys, good morning, and I know you don't like new songs, and the chorus is kind of hard in this one piece, but just try it, okay? Oh my gosh, who wants to sing that? But it's a totally different thing to go in with communicating that you believe they can do what you're asking them to do. That is essential. If we don't believe that they can do it, then we shouldn't do that piece. All right, so a warm invitational presence goes a long way. The last thing that I think transcends all kinds of song enlivening is that we have to build trust between ourselves and our people. They have to trust us. And we have to demonstrate that we are singing with them and not at them. I mean, think of the symbolism in a contemporary context of a handheld microphone. Who has the power in that relationship? Let's say I have it. I have the power, right? Because I have the amplified thing. And with all of our music being amplified, the power is easy to get sucked, using that bumper car analogy, back over the platform. Because I can shout you down. I can if I wanted to. You know? So there's an inherent power differential. So we've got to find ways to bridge that gap while building trust with our people. I mean, one of the ways in giving away our power, really, is what I'm trying to say. I've served in a rural church, an urban church, downtown First Church, an ex-urban church, and now a suburban church. My experience has been, after I have some trust with the people, they'll do nearly anything in congregational song because they know I'm there to support them. We're here to worship God together. I don't come with an agenda, maybe a little touch of narcissism, but to be a musician, you have to have that. You know? And it's not propaganda, right? Christian worship can devolve into propaganda if we're not mindful of what we're doing. So how do we develop trust with people? Go for it. How do you develop trust in any relationship?
I would say be consistent.
Be consistent?
Be
Be with people.
well, yeah.
Right?
And
I mean,
it's not just like you come in right before the service, go up on stage, and then you leave, and you don't ever interact with people.
Right.
We do a lot of, like, our greeting time in our church would probably make other people really uncomfortable because it's not a hi, how you doing? We literally spend about 10 minutes, and it is expected to actually ask them how they're doing and listen. So we really work on building community.
Yeah.
And the band is part of that because we do that after the band, we do it right before the sermon.
Okay, yeah.
And so just building community.
Yeah, building community, being with people, and as an introvert who's learned how to be an extrovert to do well, and that is like the most draining part of my work, because I would just assume like take my book and go in the mouth, close the door, read my book, and think really lofty thoughts. But can't build trust with people that way. So it's easily the most energy draining for me, but also the most rewarding in the long run. Being with people in the community, outside, in worship, absolutely. In church, outside of worship is really, really important. Knowing what's going on and being with the people in the community. Because when we do that, not only do we get to know them and build trust, we also learn what is their piety. How do they best love God? Right? A big part of that work, especially as we move into a new context, is defining what are the people's heart songs. What are the songs that they just, man, that's that thing for that community, or for many of the members of the community, that when they sing, their heart just goes wild for God. And once we learn those songs, sing them. Even if they're maybe not our favorite songs. We've got to sing the things that are heart songs for people. The ultimate goal, I think, for me in this, is to build a kind of community where we're going to sing, something, Wah 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 Baby Mo. You know the song? It's a fun song, great song from Zimbabwe. And So we're going to sing this song worship, and it's going to be wonderful. And my friend Jim, he hates it when we do that so much, but he knows Susie, and he knows that that's Susie's jam. That's her thing. She loves it. That's her heart song. And so even though it's not his thing, he's going to enter into that experience and participate because he knows it means something special to Susie. And he knows that the leadership knows him, and we will honor what is his thing as well. We're going to get to his thing too. How do we build community? Learning heart songs, being together, and learning about people. Because when there's trust, there's opportunity for warmth, for a real relationship, for community building. It's so important. And I also make it a really big priority to sing communally in places outside of worship. Every church council meeting, we start with a song. Retreats, we sing. Sunday school classes, I try to get singers in there so we can do that. It's also a really good way to introduce new songs before we get to them. And it's something just different to be in a meeting and learn something new than in worship. But when you do that, you've got kind of a running start with some of your key leadership. Plus it builds a culture of song. So all these things that we've been talking about, I think transcend any style of song enlivening, modern, global, whatever. Traditional, and it's not a terribly useful term because tradition is different to every person. So the next thing we're going to look at are some technical things that tend to, in the negative, inhibit congregational singing in a contemporary context. Okay? The first piece is we've got to be mindful of the front of house volume. What is the front of house? What does that mean?
Well, what's coming out from the...
Yeah. It's the sound that the people in the nave, or whatever term, that they actually hear. We've got to be really, really aware of that. Now, front of house volume is a subjective thing. And so, like all ministry is contextual. I've worshiped in some non-denominational churches where it is banging, it is loud, and I've experienced the presence of God and God moving in wonderful ways. And then I've been in, often mainline things where it's contemporary and it's not near as loud. And I've experienced God's presence and God's moving in real and powerful ways. So it's very much a matter of context. So when we have contextual things, how do we have a discussion about what works? And first, we have to know our people. The second thing I would commend to you wholeheartedly is to get a decibel meter. You can even get decibel meters on your phone, and then have your engineer or someone chart it for a couple weeks. Find out what decibel level are you at. What's your threshold? I talked to a lot of colleagues as I was developing this who do a lot of modern leadership, and they all have kind of really different things that they use. And each room, acoustically, settles in a different place well. Some rooms are great in the low 80s. Some work really well in the mid 90s. Depends a lot about acoustics and your people and the context. I've got some friends that would say that if you can't have a conversation with someone next to you without yelling, then it's too loud. And other friends that say, man, that's the starting point for when our people really get after it. Some people sing to do well singing when they're just bathed in sound, and other people need to hear the sound of other folks' voices. So it's a matter of knowing our people and kind of playing around a little bit. I would say that we do need to be very mindful of the effects of prolonged exposure to high decibel levels. So for example, prolonged exposure to decibel levels in the low 90s can cause permanent hearing damage in children, and for folks who have hearing aids can lead to great discomfort. So I don't know about you, I don't want to answer to Jesus for hurt kids in worship because I just need to hear a little more bass drum. You know what I'm saying? So the students need to be prepared for that. It's all about context. But if you got a service that's all people in their early 20s, kick it up and go for it. It's a matter of knowing our people. Two more words about front of house volume. Once you determine with your worship team and your leadership what's the right level for you, decibel-wise, empower your front of house engineer, your sound person, your sound tech, to keep it there, which sometimes means saying no to musicians. Musicians, I am one, don't like that, but we can't let that rule, our personal preferences, rule the overall experience. Okay, so we'll get into a little bit of that about monitor wars and kind of how that works in a few moments. Great term, isn't it? I'll say if you're so fortunate to be able to pay someone, to be able to have a little bit of money for people to work in your services, the very first person, if I had a little bit of cash and I was starting brand, the first person I would hire would be a really good sound engineer. Because you can have the greatest musicians in the world, and it all comes through one filter. And if that person doesn't necessarily know what they're doing, or is not on board with the vision for what you're working on the service, it's disastrous. So for example, what sounds really good on Saturday night in the club, not always appropriate for Sunday morning. But I found that the really good engineers, they want to have that conversation. So we get together for coffee, for lunch, talk about how it's going, what are we trying to do, we're trying to empower people to sing. My experience is folks that have a good heart for that want to learn how to do that and want to be a part of that process. So bringing them in, I think, is really, really important. So that would be the first person that I would hire, all right? If I was so lucky. The next piece is, see these lovely pictures, beautiful worship services? Okay, just kind of hold on to that, right? The mix. The mix is one of the things that can often get in the way of empowering people to sing well, right? So that's a subjective thing, of course. What is a good mix? I think what we're looking for primarily is that it's not muddy or tinny, that things are in balance, that we can hear the diction of the singers, that we can hear each of the individual instruments in their own way. I mean, for folks that do choral conducting or organists, it's the same thing. It's the same set of principles. You look for that nice big pyramid of sound that you build it off the bass, but we'll make sure that everything is clear. Now, some of the things that contribute to a poor mix is one, the sound system isn't tuned properly to the room. That is, as Churchill once said, architecture always wins. This is true in sound as well. You see that some of these churches have done some amazing worship services with contemporary stuff. I mean, look at this, all that marble. It's beautiful tracker organ. We can make it sound pretty good, but we're going to be really mindful about what we're doing. I love this sanctuary. It's like a tree's worst nightmare, but man, it's so cool. So that's piece one. In the same way, I would totally recommend, it's worth saving some pennies to have a professional come in once a year and retune the system to the room. Especially if you have volunteer sound operators, that's not kind of their day in, day out life. In the same way that we wouldn't leave a piano in a worship space for a year without tuning it, it's the same thing with the sound system. Because you can imagine, especially if you've got volunteers, you've got folks who are sitting in front of this very expensive, very large technology who don't necessarily always know what to do with it. Right? Yeah, like in our case, like the door's not locked. You don't actually have a door. People can come in and mess with whatever they want. You know?
Like we have locks on the soundboard,
Mm-hmm.
but they don't work.
Right.
So you can just pull off the cover and they can just do
It's
whatever
shiny
play
and things that have knobs and stuff.
Yeah.
So having a professional come in and ring out the room once a year, retune things, it's just worth every single penny. Another piece, so we're talking about not the sound system not being attuned to the room. You folks that call it spectral analyzers, real-time analyzers, they'll come in and they'll pump a lot of pink noise through the room, but you don't want to be in there when that happens. And then the computer will, all that pink noise goes around the room, comes back to the microphone and says, all right, at 7,500 kilohertz, you've got a problem in this room. The frequencies are way out of whack. So, all right, then the engineer can go, all right, we're going to turn that particular frequency down, the crossovers, to eliminate feedback, to eliminate all kinds of things. Worth the money. I don't know how to do that really, you know, I mean, I've seen it done, but having someone who comes in, like, I wouldn't try to tune a piano, though I kind of think I should pick it up, just because I have to do it all the time in Texas with the weather changes. But it's the same idea here. The second thing is what we call monitor wars, right? So for people that are using floor wedges for their monitoring in a band situation, you got somebody who's got just sinus infection or allergies, and they just can't hear the snare drum without hearing it. So in the sound check, say, hey, could you turn the snare drum a little bit? Yeah, okay, snare drum a little bit. And then the keyboard player over here, man, all of a sudden he's hitting a lot of extra snare drum versus this bass player. And I really need to hear some more bass drum. Could you turn some bass drum up? Yeah, sure, let's turn the bass drum up. And the keyboard player is all of a sudden hearing all this extra snare and bass drum. It's like, hey, could you put a little more guitar in there? On and on and on and on. Until, and I've seen this happen a bunch, the volume coming out of the floor wedges, out of the monitors, is louder than what's coming through the front of house system. And when that happens, your engineer has they're helpless because you can't mix that, right? So that's a real challenge. And so this is one of those things, if you get a front of house person who you trust, you need to be able to tell and say, hey, Janice, the bassist, I'm sorry, I just can't. We're maxed out. You know? That's one piece. Another thing that can cause these problems are unisolated sound sources. So for example, like an unisolated bass amp, killer, right? It's like, I think I'm probably not totally right here in my physics, but 250 feet roughly for a low E to fully unload a sound wave. So if you've got that cranked up and the engineer can't control it, and you don't have a room that's 250 feet long, you're going to get all this back and forth node stuff happening. It's just so super muddy. So some ways to do that is to build isolation cabinets, which you can do yourself to put amplifiers in. Same thing with drums. Drums can be a killer. Another option is to find a really good drummer, who can play softly.
Or an
But-
electric drum, you can turn down.
Yeah, that's an option. For me, I would rather spend the investment in getting an isolation booth where I can put an acoustic drum set in. I just think they sound better.
They do sound
Yeah,
better.
in my experience, electric drums are sort of the great equalizer. If
You
you're
just
kind of
have-
okay, they sound good. If you're really good, it sounds kind of okay.
We have to move ours a lot.
Oh yeah, so a
Yeah,
cage is gonna
like
take
literally
hours.
every Sunday.
Yeah, you gotta be
We have
practical.
to set up and
Sure.
then clear the stage, so.
Sure. Yeah. Or hot rods,
Acoustic
those are
drums, not so
pretty-
much.
Yeah, so it's a lot of effort, for sure. So some of the just kind of an idea of what those, very simple. This is called a company called Clear Sonic. You can see there's this piece here that clear plexiglass that goes around the amp. Put a mic on it, and then it has a top and back covering because they're not on right now. But it isolates the sound. You still get the feel of a tube amp, which for folks that are really into playing with tube amps, it's like I've met. I love organists. So hear this in the way it's intended. I've met snobbier purists about guitar tube amps than organists, so they can still get that feel. I actually ended up putting this one. That's a 1 watt amp. It's like not hardly any power, but it was still too much. I ended up putting it underneath the stage. So that's an option there as well. Now, more and more. Let's see, where's the next thing here? Oops. The digital processing for guitars and basses has gone leaps and bounds in the last 5 years. There's a product called an 11 rack for electric guitars. And I have some friends who are those really snobby people, I'd say that they're here, about that. And they will use 11 racks now because it's gotten so much better. It gets them to the nuance of tube amplifiers and it responds the same way with your hands. So a lot of them, we don't have amps in many places at all. You just run it all into the board because the modeling makes it sound like you have real amplifiers, which is just a glorious thing. So it eliminates all that stage noise and allows the front of house person to mix it without having to deal with acoustical anomalies. Right? So then another way to get rid of the giant worship monitor war challenge, the use of IEMs, in-ear monitors. So this is I use a brand called 1964, they're called 64 ears now, and they're custom fit for your ears. Go to the audiologist and they put this sort of cream and it molds deep inside your ear and you pull it out the string and send it away and you can get, and then they build it to fit in your ears. It cuts out 30 decibels. And so I can plug this into a little Avion box or a Behringer box or whatever, and it's got 16 channels, and I decide exactly what I want and how loud I want it in my ears, and it's great. It takes away floor wedges. I actually am able to keep the volume really low because it's the really quality speakers. And so it really is very helpful health-wise for your ears. It's not just be bombarded by that kind of sound. So if you've got a drummer in an isolation booth, for example, they have to have it because they can't hear anything anyway. But it's really good for instrumentals. But I think there's a theological piece at work here. I am way good for IEMs for rhythm section folks, color instruments, but as a song enlivener, we have to be able to hear what the congregation is doing or not doing, right, in their song. If we believe that that's the fifth member of the band, if you will, if we can't hear them as a song leader, we can't do our job. So there's a couple ways around that if you want to use IEMs, and then a kind of a hybrid solution. They make some now that are drilled with what they call ambient ports. So there's holes in the actual faceplate so you can hear what's going on around you. Or you can put ambient microphones on your congregation and then dial in the congregation into your monitor mix as well. So that's a glorious way to actually be able to hear people. In one of the services, we have kind of a hybrid combination where all the instrumentalists are on in-ears except for the song leaders. And they use wedges, but we practice with it enough that it's a very low volume, so it doesn't destroy the mix. We've got to be able to hear the people in order to enable and enliven their song.
What's the cost range on those? Do you think?
Yeah.
Well, so you can get, these are like fancy, right?
Yeah.
So you can get, Shure makes it's called Universal Fit with 2 drivers, and those are about 120. This has 4 drivers in it, so there's basically 4 speakers inside of that ear because I play a lot of bass, so I have a little bit of extra bass response. So those are $600. But I got to tell you, you can't rebuy your hearing. When it's gone, I mean, it's pretty much gone. And I've got a 10-year-old and a 7-year-old, and I love music, and I like be able to hear them and new credentials. But so for me, it was a really good investment because I do this for a couple hours every week. And to have that low 90s dB, that's going to take a toll. So I found that this has been really, really helpful for me. It sounds better, it's clearer, it's not near as loud, it takes all the stuff off the stage. They're really, it's hard to doing a contemporary worship at that kind of level. It just costs money. But you know, so does an organ. All the arts cost something at some level.
So
You know?
basically,
Yeah.
like you're hearing what the congregation is hearing, like you can get,
No.
or, okay.
You
No,
can
and
mix
then-
your own.
Yeah, you mix your own sound, so it helps you to tighten up performance.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, if you had an ambient mic, you could get a little bit of that. You said to be careful with the timing. It's close to what you're doing. Yeah, and if you're using floor wedges, you're not hearing what the congregation is doing either. You're not hearing the same thing. You're dialing in what you need to perform well. Which is why I think, especially for song leaders, if you have earbuds jammed in, you can't hear them. And it's like my other pet peeve with worship leaders, just close their eyes the whole song, they're in this great moment with God. And sometimes I think maybe they're actually afraid to look out and see that nobody's singing. So we have to be aware of what the people are doing, because that is, it's like I tell choirs, our first job is to help people sing. Anthems, oratorios, special music, I guess because the other is not special, I don't know. Our job is to help them. All the other stuff is great. It's wonderful gravy, delicious gravy, but our core work is that. So that's sort of a piece just to be mindful of moving in that direction. I'll tell you though, I do a lot of studio work and mixing, and sometimes I'll mix in my house, my own little studio, and I'll use those over my nice studio speakers because they just sound better than I've done with my children. Okay, carrying on. Another challenge is the range of the music itself. How many services you've been in where people say, that's just too high, you know, or that was too low. Common problem with CCM, because we tend to make recordings our idols, right? Try to reproduce what's happening on a recording. And if that's a temptation that some of your people have, I would encourage you to pray about that and then let it go. Because we don't need to be reproducing everything that's on a recording. For example, if we do a U2 song, there's 4 guitar parts. Pick one. It's unreasonable to expect average people to sing in the same range that Chris Tomlin sings in. That's just not reasonable. He's got a lovely voice, right? Most of my colleagues, I know, they try to think of, and you should transpose this octave wise for yourself, but of the range for their congregation would be, just to put it in treble clef terms, the D above middle C and the D in the staff. It's about an octave. And then also being really mindful of tessitura. If it hangs out a D and an E, a lot of our people who have 0 training whatsoever, we're going to wear them out. So being mindful of that, a lot of work in the keys of D and G, and occasionally A, you know. But I would say, being mindful of that, if you have a really marvelous register and some real strength, once you've got some songs that people know in your congregation pretty well, kick it up a step. You know, allow them to learn that they have that in their voice as well. And if it's a hard song, they're probably not going to be thinking about it too much. I can think of some of the hymns in the canon that they got F's up there, you know, and people will sing it because they know it. They're like in choral warms, I find this all the time. You know, we'll get altos up around like a D, E, and F, and like, oh yeah, no problem, and they see the music and panic. You know, so we got to teach them that your voice can do amazing, wonderful things, way more than you think it can. And even better, for those times when you're singing something on a congregation's behalf and you've got a register that's great, that's a great time to go for it. Blow it out, but being mindful that most of our folks don't have that kind of training, and they're doing the best that they can to even get to church on Sundays. That's pretty good for a lot of people. Nonetheless, trying to sing Chris Tomlin for an hour in Chris Tomlin's range. All right, the next piece, and I've had folks disagree with me on this, but I think they're wrong. So I think it is an act of radical hospitality to always have a strong voice on the melody. I've been to some services that if I didn't know the song, didn't have the sheet music in front of me, there was so much harmony thing going on, I couldn't really tell you what the melody was. Right? So I think having a strong voice, maybe even a male and a female voice on the melody, is also, even for songs that our congregation knows well, it's an act of hospitality for guests who are coming in and maybe don't know the music that we do. To be able to pick out the melody, to be able to hear it in a real present way. Someone was in here in the class previously and talked about how, I'm a big proponent of writing scripts for worship. So I also give those to AV people, and she will say who's got the melody in the script and which song. So the sound person knows, oh yeah, Jim's going to do the melody here, just to kind of bump it up a little bit to help people engage in the singing. sort of joke somewhat about, at least in Methodist communion liturgy, I'm sure this is another communion liturgy as well, but there's this line of, free us for joyful obedience. As singers, we need to be mindful of that as worship leaders. This is a long road of joyful obedience to help people sing. And it sometimes means we have to kind of pull ourselves back a little bit. And that is a holy and good and righteous thing. The next thing that can be a challenge for congregational songs is if the instrumentalists are not sticking to their side of the street. Right? We've got to encourage and empower, especially our volunteer musicians, lovingly remind one another that we each have a role to play, and we need to be mindful of playing that. So, for example, what instrument in a traditional praise and worship ensemble really leads the ensemble? They set the time, but who really leads the group? The drummer. If I had enough money to hire 2 people and get an engineer, and I'd get a drummer that I could talk some sense to. It's a frustrated drummer, I feel like I could have a little bit of sympathy. But they set up the kicks, they help people know what's coming, like, to transition us. So find a drummer who can help do that, or work with the ones that you have even better to give them that authority, right? The bass player keeps the time and fills out the harmonic foundation of the chords. The guitar, the acoustic guitars, are about rhythm. They help keep the rhythm moving. All the other instruments, woodwind, strings, brass, keys, synths, electric guitars, those are color instruments. But it's when nothing kills a good mix than someone playing electric guitar as if it's an acoustic guitar. They are not the same instrument. They do very different things. So helping to teach people and to remind people to live in their lane is a really, really important thing. This is true when it comes to things like solos as well. Things that work on Saturday nights don't always work on Sunday mornings. And as a multi-instrumentalist who comes from an improvisatory background, man, I'll blow over as many choruses as you'll give me. You know what I mean? But that's not the role for Sunday morning. Sunday morning is to empower and enliven the people's participation in the liturgy. You know, I recently read a column when an author was talking about burnout. And the author said that burnout isn't the result of too much work. It's the result of doing work that's not ours to do. So for example, if you're working with a keyboardist and you have a bass player, and they don't live in this world very often, have them sit on their hand for a couple weeks, their left hand, because you don't need 2 bass players. You got a bass player, you don't need the left hand filling out those chords too. I did the general conference at this church in the band. There was 2, an organist, a keyboardist, and I played bass. And we spent a good hour every day figuring out who was going to do what in the songs bass-wise. Because there's just a whole lot going on there. Plus, they have that whole other end of the keyboard too that can use some love. So it was an opportunity to do some work there. Too often, if we have undisciplined playing, it leads to a lot of kind of timbre fighting against each other in the middle frequencies where the human voice resides. Right? So we need to create space for the voice to be a good foundation, for the voice to be the primary piece. It's really easy to have too many instruments. I'll say this, and I hope it's not offensive. If you have the guitar army, like 6 acoustic guitars, that is a great opportunity to start an acoustic guitar choir and give them the opportunity to play as a group. And then I think 2 acoustic guitars is pretty much all you need, really. So an opportunity to platoon them in and out, right? Can you do 1st and 4th Sunday? You do 2nd and 3rd, or whatever it is, because once you get past 2, I can almost say 1, depending on the player, you've run out of space in that frequency. Like the Foo Fighters, for example, they play 3 electric guitars. What a lot of people don't know is the 3rd guy's playing a baritone, which is in between a regular guitar range and a bass. So he's able to fill it out. And they're very mindful of what they're playing together. So that can work to have those instruments, but you have to really, really well-defined understanding of what we're doing. So I think really the big art with our volunteers is to kind of imbue them with the spirit of Miles Davis. It's about creating space, because that's what a place for the voice to lay in. So my experience has been when everyone is encouraged to play in their lane, to fulfill their responsibility, their roles, it can be really fun, because then it's a much more cohesive and collaborative thing. Next piece I would say is that we've got to make our rehearsals count. Into so many volunteer-led rehearsals where the volunteer in charge doesn't really know what to do. And so it can devolve into a social club. There's no plan for the rehearsal. It's undisciplined and not very much gets accomplished. And our task is just so much more important than that. So as leaders, it's our job to be prepared to prepare our other leaders. Right? Show them how to do it. Yeah.
for a long time, our rehearsals were lasting about 2 hours.
Oh my.
And then just the past month, it's gone to where it's been 30 minutes. Is that going the opposite way? Am I not spending enough time on the songs?
I think it depends on depends on the level of. So, for example, I'm really it's almost like cheating in music ministry. All instrumentalists in our group, 2 of our services are professionals. So we send out a chart and a recording on Monday, and everybody knows their parts, and we come put it together in 30 minutes in a sound check. But that's like what they do all day.
Yeah.
So I would say with volunteers.
We just kind of run through the songs, like, if
Yeah.
we're in rehearsal, we just kind of go through the set.
Yeah.
And if there's something we need to fix, we fix it. But I just noticed recently, and I guess it's a good thing, is we've gone away from this having to have these really long.
Yeah, I think it probably means
discussions
you're getting more efficient, people are coming prepared. And I think one of the hardest things is when we don't empower our volunteers to work on music before the rehearsal. So they have to come into the rehearsal and learn their parts. I think that's where a lot of those 2-hour rehearsals, maybe not in your case, but in other places where they're having to learn their music in rehearsal. I mean, for me, the point of rehearsal is to learn everybody else's parts, so we can figure out how to make this work together. Excuse me, the talk about the float is bad. Sorry, I didn't need to share that with you. So setting up teams, our Teams for Success is really important. And you use Planning Center online. Yeah, it's a great tool if you have lots of different folks you're working with. You can put in recordings and it'll transpose the recordings to whatever key you're going to play it in. So you got folks that are learning by ear, they can learn it in the right key. You can schedule things like ushers and all sorts of things through it. Planning Center online, it's kind of a subscription service, so you pay per month depending on your church's size. That they have an app that you can use on a tablet where
Yep.
it's all synced up together.
I actually send out emails through the app on my phone. Like I'll plan the songs and everything. And I teach school full time, so I'm not at the church a lot. And so I'll go to the site and place all the songs in the order of worship. Because I have a template. And then I'll go to where my people are and I'll schedule all the people, and then it sends out all the emails at one time. So I can do it all from my phone.
It's a phenomenally powerful resource.
I've been using it for about 5 or 6 years.
Yeah. I would say in some sense like the canon of contemporary worship lives in Planning Center online. So you can trade lists back and forth with other people that you know on. Hey, what song you guys doing? That's really great. Oh, here's everything we did this week. Charts. It'll submit to CCLI for you. I mean, it's just really, really a neat thing.
I try to get away from loading the chord sheets and everything on there because of copyright. But I started loading YouTube links.
Sure, yeah.
So like when I have a song base or whatever that I can pull from. And so when I add a song to it, I'll find a YouTube link of that song, like the kind of around the version that we're looking at.
Right.
And I'll copy the URL and put it into the site. So when they go to the order of worship, if they don't know that song, they can click on it and go listen to it.
Have a reference recording. Yeah, it's really, really a powerful thing. So to be able to empower people to have access to that before rehearsal is huge.
Is that like a Methodist
No.
a site? It's just a...
It's
No,
called,
it's
called Planning Center
totally
online.
ecumenical. Yeah.
And it's for anybody.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
It's a tremendous resource. It takes a little bit of learning curve to get into it, but it works really, really well once you kind of figure out how it works.
when I figured out I could do it on my phone, that was the audio.
That was the
thing.
game changer.
That was because a lot, like I said, a lot of times I'm at my house or I'm at my classroom, at the end of the day or whatever. Like, oh great, I need to email.
Right.
And instead of being in my office at church, I can do it from my phone.
Yeah.
And I can
It's
do
pretty
it because
awesome.
they really rely on it. If I don't email them by Tuesday night or Wednesday morning,
You're getting emails.
I get a text, hey, one of our songs, are we having worship this week?
Right.
Yeah, I've gotten that one before.
Are we having worship?
Are we
this
having
week?
worship this week?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
I think it's nice.
So in addition to rehearsals, I think one of the most important things in rehearsals is to practice transitions. That's where the magic in worship happens, is in those transitory pieces. So practicing how are we going to get from one song to the next, especially if we're doing a set. I mean, there's a defeating thing flow-wise. All right, we finished the song, it was great. Okay, stand by. How do we make key changes? How do we move those things through? And also an additional kind of rehearsal. If you have the luxury of doing this, it is worth every moment. Our tech rehearsals with the principal players, preachers, and whatever else included, to work through those transitions with the sound people that are going to be there. That's how you eliminate so many distractions to the spirit, impediments to the spirit. By actually going through it once. Now, a lot of us don't have that luxury, but if you do, it is time really, really well spent. Okay, a couple more things and we're there. The record is not the only way to play a song. Records are wonderful. I've got 2 out myself, and they take years to make. Right? We don't have that luxury as church musicians. One of the best things about being a church musician is you've got 52 gigs a year. You also have 52 gigs a year. That keep coming. So we cannot, and really in most places, replicate the sound that it's taken a year to make for a song. So I also think that we need to be really, really mindful of the theology of what we're doing, of how God has empowered us to use our gifts. Vincent van Gogh had this great quote. It says, "Don't be a slave to your model." Don't be a slave to your model. If you've got people that can play a little bluegrass, you are blessed. Let them play some bluegrass. 10,000 Reasons with the mandolin, pretty cool. If you've got some jazzers, let them do their thing. What's the very first, we got to make it work for our context. What's the very first trait of God in the Bible that we learn about God? What's the very first one? What's the very first trait of God that we learn about that God has in the Bible? God is Genesis 1. What's the first thing God does?
Create.
Right. God is creator. We don't learn that God is loving. We don't learn that God is filled with grace. The first thing we learn about God is that God is creative. And if we take that seriously, we have the image of God inside of us. We have the imago Dei in us, which means that we are inherently creative and there's nothing we can do about it. We can choose to embrace it and nurture it, or to push it away and let it flounder. But if we've got folks that do, like I said, the example earlier, bluegrass, allow them to check out that imago Dei and it's already inherent and let them do their thing. Don't feel like we've got to reproduce a recording verbatim.
I had my band, I was gone one day when we for rehearsal. On Sunday morning, they had turned one of our songs we've done for a year into a reggae song.
Beautiful.
Without me knowing.
That
That was a little hard.
Yeah. So allow your people to embrace the imago Dei that's inside of them and that creative gift, because it will, when properly channeled, maybe not finding out in the middle of the song that we're going to reggae, but it
When
can
you're
be a
leading it.
beautiful and glorious thing, right? Second to last thing, flow, liturgical flow in a worship service will make or break us, and will make or break congregational singing. We've got to be really aware of doing plug-and-play worship, where it's chunk to chunk to chunk to chunk. I've got my template in the word processor, and I'm going to put in what I need here, and for this thing and this thing. Now, sometimes we have to do that just for survival. Life gets in the way. Sometimes we have to do that. But our worship is so much better. People have such a deeper and richer and more connected experience when there's a through line in the service that flows from piece to piece. Does that make sense? Like the power of underscoring a scripture reading can be phenomenal. The power of introducing a threshold moment at the beginning of a service where we've got a song that we're going to do later, that those chords are undergirding a story that the preacher's telling, or asking folks to engage in a question that's related to the theme, and then bringing that melody and that harmonic changes throughout the service is a totally different experience than, okay, now we're going to do the call to worship. That's completed. Now we will do like it's a checklist, right? Like I say, some days, like 6 services a weekend. Believe me, I've done my fair share of plug and play worship just to like survive. But if we can be really mindful of our flow, it really, really helps and to undergird the opportunity for people to participate, because they just get, it's like watching a film. They get sucked into that new liminal place. A brief word on the repertoire. I believe that a diverse repertoire is very, very, very important. It's super easy in a modern context to fall into the trap of, we only do songs that are written the last 2 or 3 years. To my way of thinking, that is very destructive to the body of Christ. We stand on folks that have walked this faith path for 2,000 years. And so to deny the gifts and the witness of the community of the saints is not a good thing for us. It's important for us to also show that we're not making this up on our own, that we have roots and foundation. Now, some of that music might not look the same performance practice as it did 100 years ago, but that doesn't mean we need to restrict ourselves to a very narrow Western 2 years of slice of church music. Does that make sense? We've got to be looking for new things in new places. One of the greatest gifts that's coming our way right now in church music is the gift of song from the global south. That is where the real center of Christianity is. It is not in the north anymore. And so I'm hopeful that in the same way our brothers and sisters in the south have been receptive to learning our songs, that we will avail ourselves to the gift of learning their music as well. And so much of that music is in a cyclic structure, right? So hymns are strophic. Right? Cyclical music is so, I mean, that's what a chorus is. Right? Your chorus over and over, it's cyclic. We can utilize that music to undergird ritual moments, to teach, to experience God's presence. Like Tazay, you go to Tazay services, and yet, no? So you sing Tazay services songs often until the Spirit tells you to stop, and it allows you to create a place where it's almost like a mantra. And so we can pray over that mantra. So not just doing things that are in the last 2 or 3 years is really important. On the flip side, don't do the same, or related to that, we can't do the same 25 songs a year. That destroys congregational singing. So does doing 7 new songs a week. Right? So I can't imagine a time where I would need to teach more than 1 new song a week. It just overwhelms people. So one of the services that Grace Avenue that I'm part of, in a little bit more intimate way, we started from pretty much ground zero. New community, new people, new songs. So we're looking to get a repertoire. I actually learned this from Greg Shear, he's one of the clinicians here this year, from one of his books. We're shooting for a repertoire of about 200 songs that are diverse theologically, stylistically, and from whence they come. It's like, for example, in Dallas, we can't start off the praise and worship service with praise and worship a week after, last Thursday. How you guys doing? Terrible.
Yeah.
And one of the wonderful things of watching is the genre, really, of contemporary Christian music is 50, 60 years old, maybe. So it has not had the time to mature that the Western hymnody has. But now, post 9/11, you can find songs of lament that are theologically appropriate. So we're working to build a repertoire around 200 songs that expresses those different theological needs. And I also encourage us to look in unexpected places, the Iona community, the Tazay community, global songs, maybe you read tunes and hymns. There is a wonderful movement right now of new hymns that can be appropriated and arranged a little bit differently, that express some of the theological concerns that just were not theological concerns 50 years ago. So just encourage you to look at some new places and embrace that imago Dei, that creativity that lives inside of you. A couple last things. Just a few things to kind of rehash what we've talked about. Our congregation's participation in worship is our primary reason for existence. We have to teach new songs, but we need to do it in the appropriate place in worship. We talked about a way to do that using the acoustic guitar in the band, teaching it sequentially over the course of several weeks. I would encourage you to always leave a strong voice on the melody. Just said that. This is a pet peeve of mine worship-wise, but keep your eyes open, otherwise we might miss what the Spirit is doing amongst the people. If we have our eyes closed, and that second that we were doing that last chorus, and the people are really into it, we got earbuds to our ear, we might not see it. They're ready to sing a cappella for two or three more goes. We gotta keep our eyes open and be aware of what's happening in the context around us. I said earlier, stage instrumental solos for fills or introductions or outros, preludes, postludes, that sort of thing. 25 songs a year is a killer, but the same way of 7 new songs a week, the same sort of thing. When it comes to keeping a good worship flow going, one of the things I think kills worship flow is the slightly gratuitous worship leader story about the next song we're going to do. Oh man, my cat died 3 weeks ago. This song was just on the radio and it really spoke to me. And the words of the great song leader from Argentina, Pablo Sosa, keep it heartfelt and brief. We have preachers to do preaching. We need to do our thing. Now, a well-timed word is unbelievably helpful, but just not getting into those 2 or 3 minutes of talking before songs. It's just, it's clarity of diction and text that goes, of course, vital in the worship experience. If I was going to do 5 things, this would be it. For enlivening people's songs in any context, but especially in a praise band. Trust with your people is vitally important. Sing all the time, especially outside of worship. Be mindful of our context. One church is not like the other. A warm, invitational presence goes a real long way to getting people to sing. If you believe that they can do it and they can sense that you know they can, and they trust you, treat it as an adventure, it can be a marvelous thing. And then know the heart songs of your people and make sure you sing those too. It's just really, really important to developing trust and community. Okay, we have exactly 1 minute left. If it would be helpful for you, I tend to sometimes kind of speak really fast, and I'd be glad to email this to you if that would be of value to you. If not, no problem. The 2 handouts there that you got, one was just kind of the highlights of what we were talking about. And then I really love creative worship, so I've got a creative worship resource list. So books, some websites I found valuable, things of that nature. So I hope that's helpful to you. Any comments, questions, concerns, snide remarks, compliments? I'll take it all. All right. Well, thank you all so much for being here. God bless you. Thank you for your ministry. You are changing the lives of hundreds and hundreds of people every week. What you do matters. Sometimes it's hard to remember that, but it does. God bless you. Thank you so much.